Heads up.
Good afternoon, everyone. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have repeatedly made clear that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues on any issue whenever and wherever possible in order to make a difference in the lives of the American people. And throughout this Congress, House Democrats have governed from the minority as if we were in the majority, in order to deliver real results for everyday Americans and to solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers. Our commitment remains the same. But we need traditional Republicans to break with MAGA extremists and partner with us so we can keep the government open and meet the needs of the American people. What's the challenge? Donald Trump has ordered extreme MAGA Republicans in the House to shut the government down unless they can jam parts of Trump's Project 2025 agenda down the throats of the American people. That's a non-starter. We will not let the American people be extorted by extreme MAGA Republicans who are trying to turn back the clock, undermine freedom, and suppress the vote because they don't believe they can make a compelling case to the American people on November 5th. Questions?
Jeffries, you said in June that with regard to the appointments of Ronnie Jackson and Scott Perry to the House Intelligence Committee, that if Democrats take the majority, you, quote, a different decision would be made. Do you plan to decline to reappoint those two individuals to the committee if the Republican leader reappoints them? And would any other Republicans be at risk of exclusion from committees?
To be continued.
So have you talked directly with Johnson about what this next play might be, or is it just anticipated that we're waiting for the Senate here? I mean, is there any negotiation at all in terms of saying, okay, I can deliver this many numbers on a straight CR, nothing like that?
The House has a responsibility to keep the government open and meet the needs of the American people. Pursuant to the United States Constitution, all appropriations bills have to initiate in the House of Representatives. The extreme MAGA Republicans are determined to shut the government down and hurt everyday Americans because they are on an ideological crusade. This is not anti-woke week. It's Project 2025 week. In fact, every week is Project 2025 week because that is the extreme MAGA Republican agenda. And we're determined to stand up for the American people. I have not spoken to Speaker Johnson today or subsequent to the collapse of the House Republican shutdown bill. But time is short. Our staffs are in communication with each other. And what occurs over the next few days will be determinative as to whether we can find the common ground necessary to fund the government, avoid a shutdown, and meet the needs of the American people. This should not be complicated. In May of last year, more than 300 members of the House of Representatives, including a majority of House Republicans, supported the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act, which set top-line spending numbers for fiscal year 2025. And we all agreed that partisan policy writers would be left out of any appropriations bills. House Republicans are violating their own agreement. Why? Because they want to jam Trump's Project 2025 agenda down the throats of the American people, and in the alternative, shut down the government. That's reckless and irresponsible. We will continue to stand up for the American people.
Would that include money for the Secret Service?
Just to follow up on Chad's question, you said you haven't spoken to Speaker Johnson since the bill on his proposal failed last night. Can you characterize more generally what your conversations with the Speaker have been on this? Are you guys on the same page about how this ultimately will end? Does the Speaker understand that this is leading towards a clean CR?
Any private conversation with Speaker Johnson will remain private. However, there's nothing inconsistent between what I may say to Speaker Johnson privately and what we are saying publicly. This is not complicated. We have already reached an agreement connected to the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act with respect to the top-line spending number for fiscal year 2025. And we will not accept any partisan right-wing policy changes to current law. That was an agreement that we reached last year, and we expect that agreement to be kept. We are also, as House Democrats, not going to allow Republicans to cut $12 billion in funding for veterans' health care that would undermine our ability to meet the needs of veterans who are suffering painful exposure to toxic substances, burn pits, and Agent Orange. As House Democrats, we will not let extreme MAGA Republicans shortchange our military readiness to the tune of $6 billion. And we will also not let House Republicans fail to meet the needs of the American people who are suffering from the harmful impact of extreme weather events by shortchanging the American people by $25 billion. And so there's nothing inconsistent with that public position that I might otherwise say to Speaker Johnson privately.
Are you, again, willing to come to Johnson's rescue, in a sense, on this? Because a shutdown, obviously, even just a 2-hour shutdown or whatever, might very well accrue better towards the Democrats and Democratic candidates.
Our position has always been we're going to do the right thing by the American people and continue to govern in a common sense, bipartisan manner to deliver real results for everyday Americans. With respect to any future motion to vacate, our view has always been we will evaluate it on a case-by-case basis.
I'm not talking about the motion to vacate. I'm talking about coming to his rescue to keep the government open.
Well, it's not coming to Mike Johnson's rescue, which is why I was confused a bit by the question. It's coming to the rescue of the American people. That's our job, is to make sure we meet the needs of the American people in terms of their health, safety, national security, and economic well-being. Democrats have repeatedly demonstrated that we will do what is necessary to deliver real results for everyday Americans. We want to avoid a shutdown, but we are also not going to pay the MAGA extremists' ransom demand of jamming parts of Trump's Project 2025 into an appropriations bill and down the throats of the American people.
Can you just lay out some of your top concerns about the SAVE Act, which has been attached to the Senate bill?
It's a voter suppression bill that is simply designed to enact parts of Trump's Project 2025 agenda. Current law is very clear. It's very clear. What is so complicated about the fact that only citizens under the United States Constitution and federal law are permitted to vote in federal elections?
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Now, I want to talk about Amber Thurman, the black woman who died of sepsis after being denied medical care due to Georgia's abortion ban. Now, she was only 28 years old and left behind a young child. She's just one of many who has suffered greatly due to the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. But what message can you send those who feel hopeless around matters of reproductive freedom?
And my heartfelt condolences go out to Amber's family. This should never have happened, and it is a direct result of Donald Trump and extreme MAGA Republican efforts to kill the protections of Roe v. Wade and now to pursue a national abortion ban. It's part of their agenda. Their agenda is very clear. The extreme MAGA Republican agenda is very clear. A national abortion ban, Trump's Project 2025, and massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and big corporations. That's their agenda. And the hope that the American people should feel on this issue is that as Democrats, led by President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, we believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. We support access to contraception and birth control. We support IVF. The extreme MAGA Republicans do not. And as soon as we have the opportunity to act, House Democrats will swiftly pass the Women's Health Protection Act that will restore the protections of Roe v. Wade and beyond in terms of access to contraception, freedom of movement and travel, as well as access to IVF. This is in the hands of the American people over the next 47 days. And it's clear that the American people stand on the side of reproductive freedom. Thanks. Chad.
The cap on salt sunsets next year, as it stands right now. If you become speaker, which you certainly want to be, would under any circumstances would you put legislation on the House floor that would either cap in part or in whole salt going forward?
We are committed to making sure we reverse the damage that was done by the extreme MAGA Republicans in connection with the 2017 GOP tax scam, which capped the state and local tax deduction. And for many middle-class families in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, and California, as well as other parts of the country, all but eliminated the state and local tax deduction in a meaningful way and resulted in tax increases for middle-class families, in some cases by thousands of dollars. The irony of all ironies is that the former president shows up in Nassau County yesterday with House Republicans like Congressman D'Esposito. Elise Stefanik couldn't even pronounce her name correctly. How much did that hurt? And so many others who were responsible for detonating the state and local tax deduction or have failed to restore it and now want to claim that they're going to come to the rescue. They were the arsonists who burned down the state and local tax deduction, and they have no credibility in trying to pretend right now that they'll be the firefighters. We will work in a bipartisan way to restore the state and local tax deduction. But here's why the November election is so important on this issue. The state and local tax deduction cap will lapse on its own as of December 31st, 2018. 2025. It will lapse on its own. No action is required. And so who has the gavels on January 3rd in the 119th Congress will determine whether the state and local tax deduction is restored in full or whether it continues to be capped in a way that hurts middle-class families.
Thank you. You made clear that you want a clean short-term CR, but there's a group of senators that want some emergency relief for natural disasters. There are others who want some emergency funding for the Secret Service. When you say clean, are you willing to accept anything at all, or do you mean it just has to extend 24 funding as it currently exists?
Yeah, we are open-minded about meeting the needs of the American people in the context certainly of disaster assistance. And we've got to get the Secret Service into a position where its protectees can be shielded in the most maximum way possible from harm. That means President Biden, former President Trump, Vice President Kamala Harris, Governor Tim Walz, Senator J.D. Vance, or anyone else who may fall within the scope of Secret Service protection. In the House, we have a bipartisan task force led ably by Congressman Jason Crow on our side that's working in good faith with House Republicans to assess the situation in terms of the failures to date connected to the Secret Service and to come up with recommendations as to how do we prevent the type of situation, the type of close call that has now occurred with the former president from ever happening again. We're committed to that exploration and turning the situation around with respect to the Secret Service, but I do not want to get out ahead of the bipartisan recommendations from the task force that will be forthcoming.
But disaster relief you could accept on CR?
A disaster relief, I think, is probably ripe for a four corners agreement. And that's not to say that addressing the Secret Service is not ripe at this point in time, but that investigation is still ongoing by this bipartisan task force, and they haven't presented any recommendations to us at this particular point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Going back to New York, the former president, as you mentioned, was in the state. New York and California are key to you all winning the majority. You've expressed confidence in the prospects in New York. How confident are you in the work that you and local leaders have done to shore up the state and win back that state after Donald Trump said that not only will House Republicans keep the House, he's going to win New York? Just what's your reaction to that comment, and how confident are you that those seats that Republicans won in 22, you all will win back in 24?
It's a laughable suggestion by the former president, Donald Trump, that he's going to win New York. He will not win New York, and it will not be close. And for the life of me, many of us can't figure out why the so-called swing seat Republicans in New York have tethered themselves so closely to Donald Trump. The explanation is that they've been exposed as extreme MAGA Republicans and have stopped trying to pretend to be moderate because that hasn't worked. And so we, under the leadership of Governor Kathy Hochul, in partnership with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, feel as though we are prepared to do what's necessary to make our best possible case to voters in all of the contested congressional elections in New York. Governor Hochul should be commended for leading a significant effort to strengthen the New York State Democratic Party, and in partnership with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who's done an incredible job, stand up a coordinated campaign for the first time in modern New York history that rivals anything that we've seen in battleground states across the country. Thank you. Go back to this side. Yep, you got it.
As folks head home to campaign in a few weeks, what is your message to Democrats about what your legislative agenda would be if you guys won next year?
House Democrats are going to continue to put people over politics and to fight for lower costs, to grow the middle class, and to defend freedom, including a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. We need to take decisive action in the new Congress, partnering with enlightened leadership in the White House and with our colleagues in the Senate to address the housing affordability crisis and lower housing costs for everyday Americans. We need to make sure that those Americans who are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck can get ahead as opposed to simply getting by. And of course, we need to pass the Women's Health Protection Act and the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act, along with the Freedom to Vote Act, so we can both defend democracy and defend our freedom. Thanks. Go back.
Misinformation is going to be a big issue this campaign cycle, and we've already seen a lot of it. We've seen lies being told about Haitian migrants in Ohio, and we've also seen lies being told about Senator J.D. Vance and a relationship with a couch. Have you had talks with your congressman?
Haven't really followed that couch situation. I've stayed away from that one.
Have you had talks with your conference about being careful about, seeing something online and exasperating it or sharing it?
From our standpoint, we continue to keep the focus on issues related to making a difference in the lives of the American people, lowering costs, addressing the housing affordability crisis, growing the middle class, fighting for reproductive freedom, and defending democracy. We also will contrast that with the Republican agenda, which is a nationwide abortion ban, Trump's Project 2025, and massive tax cuts for big corporations. There's no need for us ever to engage in conspiracy theory peddling or propagating misinformation, because on the issues, Democrats are right and Republicans are wrong. We're still waiting for some clarity from my Republican colleagues as to why they continue to entertain conspiracy theories, attack people in ways that don't relate to issues but relate to people's racial agenda or ethnicity or gender identification, as opposed to debating us in the arena of ideas. The reason that many Republicans continue to engage in lies, misinformation, and conspiracy theories is because they have a horrible track record of accomplishment. Can anyone in America name a single thing that House Republicans have done on their own to make life better for the American people? Can anyone name a single thing during the 118th Congress? The answer is no. They have a horrible track record of accomplishment. Instead, they visited chaos, dysfunction, and extremism on the American people. And their vision for the future is deeply unpopular, which is why they're running away from their extreme agenda. But House Republicans can run. We will not let them hide from their desire to impose a nationwide abortion ban, Trump's Project 2025 agenda, or big tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and big corporations. We will not let them hide, and we're going to contest them in the arena of ideas. Thanks. Yep. Well, it's a caucus-wide discussion before we can commit to, at this point, what bills will be brought to the floor during the first 100 days. However, I think one thing that is clear is we will lean in to the enhanced and expanded child tax credit so we can be there for working families, middle-class families, and low-income families under the leadership of Rosa DeLauro. We will lean in to lowering housing costs and making sure we address the affordability crisis, and look forward to partnering with the Harris-Walz administration in that regard, who have articulated a clear plan to make sure that rent can be afforded and home ownership opportunities made available to all Americans. And of course, we have to defend freedom and democracy through enactment of the Women's Health Protection Act, Freedom to Vote Act, and John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Thanks.
Can I get your reaction to the explosions we saw in Lebanon this week targeting Hezbollah pagers and walkie-talkies? Do you think this is an escalation by Israel, and what are your thoughts on these attacks?
Yeah, I have not had a secure briefing on the issue yet, and until such time, I'm going to reserve judgment. Israel, of course, has the right to defend itself. There's a special relationship between the United States and Israel. But I also, at the same time, support President Biden and Vice President Harris's efforts to enact a peace plan for Gaza and to de-escalate any tensions that exist in the region in order to avoid an all-out conflict. Last question?
Thanks, Senator Jeffries. A couple weeks ago, the DOJ and the FBI did a big press conference highlighting Russia's efforts to interfere in our elections. Now that we have seen that Iran is also doing the same thing, but seemingly in the favor of the Harris campaign, do you think that the administration or the Harris campaign need to do more to bring attention to that as well? I think so far we've seen maybe a press release, but given that the other situation got so much press and so much attention.
Foreign interference in American elections is unacceptable in any circumstance. That is the Democratic position. It's our hope that that will be the Republican position as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I just got, pictures of me. Were you going to take this?
Please welcome Chairman of the Economic Club of Washington,
Can I have your
D.C.,
attention, please?
David
Can
M.
everybody please take their
Rubenstein.
seats? Okay, thank you. So the Economic Club of Washington is honored to have the 46th President of the United States as our special guest today. All of you probably know his background, but just briefly, for somebody that might have been under a rock for a while, let me just tell you a little bit about the President, our special guest. He was elected to the United States Senate in 1972 at the age of 29. You have to be 30 to be a senator, but he was sworn in after he turned 30 years old, and then served the United States Senate for 36 years. And he rose up to be the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and then later the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And then when Barack Obama was selecting a vice president, he asked Joe Biden to serve as his vice president. He served 2 terms as vice president. And then in 2020, he ran for president of the United States and was elected, defeating the incumbent president. And I've known Joe Biden for a long time, and I would say first came to know him when he was the first senator, sitting senator, to endorse my then boss, Jimmy Carter, for president of the United States. Carter was running for president in 1976, and his first Senate endorsement was from Joe Biden, and they retained a close relationship, and I've retained a close friendship with him for a number of years. I'm honored to call him a friend, and it's my great honor to introduce now the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you, David. In my household, we refer to David as the Washington Monument. Been a friend a long time. And not only thank you for the introduction, David, but thank you for your friendship. And thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here. Yesterday was an important day for the country, in my view. 2.5 years after the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates, it announced that it would begin lowering interest rates. I think it's good news for consumers, and it means the cost of buying a home, a car, and so much more will be going down. And it's good news, in my view, for the overall economy, because lower borrowing costs will support economic growth. And it's an important signal from the Federal Reserve to the nation that after repeated interest hikes to cool down inflation, inflation has come back down, and the Fed is switched to lowering rates to keep the country growing, economy growing. At its peak, as you all know, inflation was 9.1% in the United States. Today, it is much closer to 2%. It doesn't mean our work is done. Far from it. Far from it. No one should confuse why I'm here. I'm not here to take a victory lap. I'm not here to say a job well done. I'm not here to say we don't have a hell of a lot more work to do. We do have more work to do. But what I am here to speak about is how far we come, how we got here, and most importantly, the foundation that I believe built for a more prosperous and equitable future in America. So let's be clear. The Fed lowering interest rates isn't a declaration of victory. It's a declaration of progress. It's a signal we've entered a new phase of our economy and our recovery. You know, I believe it's important for the country to recognize this progress because if we don't, the progress we made will remain locked in the fear of negative mindset that dominated our economic outlook since the pandemic began. Instead of seeing the immense opportunities in front of us right now, this is a moment, in my view, for business to feel greater confidence, to invest higher, and to expand. It's a moment for individuals to feel greater confidence buying a home, a new car, starting a family, starting a new business. We're creating jobs. Employment remains very low. Small business creation is at its historic highs. The economy is growing. The main challenge we've had has been a painful one, but it's been the pandemic and the inflation it created, causing enormous pain and hardship for families all across America. It's not true just for us, but for every major economy in the world. But now inflation is coming down in the United States. The fact is, it's come down faster and lower than almost any other world's advanced economies. So now instead of looking at interest rates increases, interest rates are going to be coming down, and they're expected to go down further. And that's a good place for us to be. Now, a lot of people, as you all know, maybe you know a few, thought we'd never get here. When Kamala and I came to office, 3,000 people a day were dying of COVID, 3,000 a day. Millions of Americans had lost their jobs, their businesses, and the global economy was in a tailspin. 4 years ago, we inherited the worst pandemic in a century, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. In fact, my predecessor was one of just two presidents in American history who left office with fewer jobs than the day he came to office. The other, Herbert Hoover. When I came to office, there was no real plan in place, no plan to deal with the pandemic, no plan to get the economy back on its feet, nothing, virtually nothing. In fact, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office predicted we wouldn't see a full recovery until well after the end of my first term in office. But I refused to accept that, like many of you refused to accept it. I came to office determined not only to deliver immediate economic relief for the American people, but to transform the way our economy works over the long term. To write a new economic playbook. Grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not just the top down. Put workers first. Support unions to make sure workers have a bargaining clout they need to get a fair price to grow that pie. And after all, it's the productivity. They're the productivity baked into that pie, in my view. Leave no one behind. Foster fair competition. Invest in all of America and in all Americans. When we do things for the poor and they have a ladder up, the middle class does very well and the wealthy continue to do very well. We all do well, and we are doing well. Working families and the middle class are the center of a strong, equitable, and sustainable recovery. Here are the keys from the new playbook, in my view. Within the first 2 months in office, I signed the American Rescue Plan, one of the most significant economic recovery packages in our history. Not a single person on the other team, Republicans, voted for it. It delivered shots in the arm for vaccines to vaccinate the nation in one of the most sophisticated logistical operations in American history. I found it incredibly difficult to plan that. Without protecting our nation from COVID, our economic recovery would never have taken off. It also delivered immediate economic relief for those who needed it the most. An individual earning less than $75,000 a year received a $1,400 check. So a family of 5 earning less than $150,000 a year could receive as much as $7,000. And by the way, middle-class families like the one I grew up in, many of you grew up in, that is a game changer. That saved people's sense of being. It also prevented a wave of evictions, bankruptcies, and delinquencies and defaults that the previous crises weakened the recovery and left working families permanently further behind. I was determined to avoid what Secretary Yellen called the economic scarring that hurt so many Americans and left them behind in the past. We delivered essential funding to states and local governments to keep essential services moving, to keep teachers and first responders on the job, to keep small businesses open, and to build more housing. We also expanded the child tax credit to cut child poverty in half. With the Butch-Lewis Act, we took the most significant action in 50 years to protect the pensions of millions of union workers and retirees. Before we acted, workers faced cuts to their pensions. Now we're restoring the full amount of their pensions, including for workers who previously saw cuts. And there's so much more. But we also know the pandemic led to a surge in inflation all across America and the world, and the country, I should say. And the economy shut down and then opened back up in an unprecedented manner. Shipping had stalled. Factories shut down. Inflation grew worse after Putin invaded Ukraine, which sent food prices skyrocketing, energy prices soaring around the world. So we immediately brought together business and labor to fix the problem of broken supply chains and unclog our ports, trucking networks, and shipping lines. Remember those massive cargo ships stuck outside the port of Los Angeles, delaying deliveries and driving up prices during the holiday season? Remember that? We remember the shortage of baby formula and the crisis that caused? Well, we got supply chains back to normal. When we did that, inflation began to ease. Not solve, but ease. I also rallied our allies to stand against Putin's aggression. In the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot of support for that. I warned them all. I got clearance from the intelligence community to let them know when he was going to invade. They didn't believe it was going to happen. But he invaded exactly when I said he was. Led the world to realize that we're in real problem. And releasing oil reserve to stabilize global markets. By the way, our gas prices are now down to $3.22, lower than before the invasion. And $3 below $3 a gallon in 14 states, including Delaware. I can go home now, past the gas station. Energy production from all sources is now at record highs in America. Record highs. And unlike my predecessor, I respect the Federal Reserve's independence as they pursued its mandate to bring inflation down. That independence has served the country well. And by the way, I've never once spoken to the chairman of the Fed since I became president. It will also do enormous damage to our economy if that independence is ever lost. You know, my new economic playbook also rejects the long-held conventional view among economists, many economists, that we had to lower our ambitions to bring inflation down. After I took action to rescue the economy, we got relief to families that needed it. Some experts predicted that people that we would leave the labor market and not come back to work. They referred to this as the Great Resignation. Remember that? The Great Resignation. Well, to state the obvious, they were dead wrong. We now have the highest working age employment in decades. Other critics said it would take the loss of millions of American jobs and a decline in real wages and yes, the recession to get inflation back down. Possible, but I refuse to accept that. I believe sometimes over the amazement of my staff that we should seize the moment to finally invest in all of America and all Americans for decades to come. We did just that with what I call our Investing in America agenda. How can we have the strongest economy in the world without the most advanced infrastructure in the world? How can that be? That's why I wrote and worked so hard to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. Most significant law in generations to modernize our roads, bridges, ports, airports, trains, buses, removing every lead pipe from schools and homes so every child could drink clean water, providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where they live, not unlike what Franklin Roosevelt did. Remember what he did? You don't remember. You weren't around. Nor, by the way, I wouldn't. I'm old, but I wasn't there either. But he decided that rural America had to have access to electricity. The internet is as critical as electricity was during his period. I remember saying that to my younger staff, and they looked at me, well, what are you talking about? But look, we're growing our economy. Got more to do. We're improving our quality of life. We're literally building a better America because of all of you. In fact, Buy American has been the law of the land since the 1930s. And I have to admit to you, Congressman Carper, my buddy, I didn't realize that when they wrote the law in 33 about unions organizing, they also had a provision in there. It says any money the president is sent from the Congress to invest in an investment in America should use American workers and use American products. Past administrations, including my predecessor, failed to buy American. Not anymore. Kamala and I are making sure the federal projects building American roads, bridges, highways, and so much more beyond that, like aircraft carriers and tanks, they'll be made with American products, built by American workers, creating good-paying American jobs. How can we be the strongest nation in the world without leading the world in science and technology? I mean, think about it. We walked away for a long while investing in science and technology as a government. During the pandemic, American people learned about supply chains. You know, I remember going home saying the supply chain, and my family, the supply chain. What the hell's a supply chain? No, but I'm serious. Think about it. It became common knowledge what we're talking about to the average American. And the shortage of semiconductors, those little tiny computer chips, smaller than the tip of your finger, that power everyday lives, from smartphones to automobiles to dishwashers to advanced weapon systems and so much more. Think about it, it takes over 3,000 chips to build an automobile. Remember the crisis when you didn't have access to them in the automobile industry? And by the way, we invented those chips here in America. And we still design the most sophisticated chips in the world. But over time, my predecessors thought it was better to manufacture those chips overseas because labor was cheaper. That's why they went overseas. The result? When the pandemic shut down those chip factories overseas, the price of everything went up because we didn't have enough chips here in America. We learned the hard way that one of the best ways to strengthen our supply chain is to make sure the supply chain starts in America. Starts in America. And by the way, if I get a hole in the back there, that's why I have great relations with our European friends. But this is one where they go, whoa. That's why I literally wrote and signed the Chips and Science Act to bring manufacturing back home and so much more. As a result, private companies from around the world are now investing tens of billions of dollars to build new chip factories right here in America, New York, Ohio, Arizona, all across the country. You know, it takes time to build these factories. Look, the number of construction workers is way up and they're making good salaries. Already creating tens of thousands of jobs in construction facilities. But the American public's going, well, where's all this going, Biden? Because they expected this to happen overnight. You got to build the factories first. When these factories are finally built, we'll have tens of thousands of jobs running those factories, so-called fabs. As you all know, this is one audience I want to explain to. These fabs are bigger than football fields. Creating jobs that are going to pay over $100,000 a year, and you don't need a college degree. And it's going to generate such economic growth with the one outside of Columbus, Ohio, 1,000 acres. I call it a field of dreams. The old playbook was to go abroad, the cheapest labor, export American jobs, import foreign products. Our new playbook is we export American products and create American jobs right here in America where they belong. But that's not all. I wrote and signed the law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the most significant climate law ever anywhere in the history of the world. When I say I wrote, I actually did write some of this, as my daughter would say, with my own paw. Skeptics told me we couldn't get it done. Remember? We couldn't get this done. There was no possibility of this. There wasn't a consensus. And if we did it, it would be too late and too little. But we did it with your help. $369 billion for climate and clean energy. More than ever happened in the history of the world. Not a single one of the opposition, Republican friends, voted for it. It took Vice President Harris to cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. The Inflation Reduction Act. It's going to help cut carbon emissions in half by 2030. We're well on the way, including, well, I won't go into it all, and creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying, clean energy jobs for American workers. We set up a climate corps, just like the Peace Corps. It's going to, you watch what happens with that. Lower energy costs for families with tax credits, to install rooftop solar and efficient energy appliances, to weatherize your windows and doors with high-tech insulation, more efficient heating and cooling systems, get a tax credit for doing it and grow employment and grow the economy, and so much more. And again, many of you are doing it. You're the ones doing it. Are creating these good-paying jobs. The Inflation Reduction Act also focused on lowering costs for prescription drugs. There was a law in America that I fought like hell as a senator, and a lot of others have did for a long, long time, to change the law. The only agency that could not negotiate prices was Medicare. For years, many other members of Congress fought for decades to change that and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices, like the VA. was able to negotiate drug prices for veterans. Well, with the Inflation Reduction Act, we finally beat Big Pharma. And we finally gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. And now, many of the seniors have diabetes, as one example. But now, instead of paying up to $400 a month for that insulin, for their diabetes, they're only paying $35 a month. $35. And they're still making a hell of a profit, by the way. You know how much it costs to make that insulin? $10. T-E-N dollars. $10. Package the whole thing and get up to $13. By the way, if I had Air Force One sitting out there, I could get you in a plane and take you anywhere in the world, any major capital. Whatever prescription you have, I can get it for you cheaper in Toronto, London, Berlin, Rome, anywhere around the world. But it's just beginning. The same law says that starting this January, we don't have to change any new changes with the law, the existing law, every senior's total prescription drug costs will be capped at $2,000 a year, no matter how expensive their drugs are. Even expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year. These reforms don't just save seniors money, but equally important, they save every American taxpayer money. Just so far, these reforms will save American taxpayers $160 billion over the next decade because Medicare won't have to spend that anymore. And by the way, that weight loss medicine is just getting going, man, that debate. Watch. All told, we're proving that we can bring down inflation while safeguarding hard-won gains in jobs and real wages in American workers. Today, a record 16 million jobs created, more than any other single presidential term. When I took office, more than 2 million women left the workforce due to the pandemic. If you listen to these other guys, they think women don't want to work. They don't know women in America. Oh, I'm serious. Watch. Watch, watch, watch. And speaking of watches, on my watch, we reversed the loss. We actually increased the number of women working by an additional 2 million women in the workforce. And by the way, we have the highest share of working-age women on jobs since 1948. And we started to keep track that back then. With wages up, incomes up for women workers, we've always believed women should be paid equally for equal work, and there's not a single damn job a woman can't do that a man can do, including being President of the United States of America. You all think I'm kidding. My younger sister used to be 3 years younger than me. She's now 20 years younger. Went to the same university, took the same courses. She graduated honors. I graduated. She's the one who should be. Anyway, 19 million people have applied to start new businesses. That's a record. And here's the thing about those new businesses. Every application to start a new business is an act of hope. It's an act of optimism, hope. More Americans have health insurance than ever before, and I don't think that should be something we should sneeze at. Everyone deserves basic health care. The racial wealth gap is the smallest in 20 years. Remember how many economists thought we need a recession to bring down inflation? There was even a major financial news headline, which I'll not reference, saying, 100% chance of recession in 2023. Well, instead, our economy grew by more than 3% last year, and inflation came way down. American households came out of the crisis, American households, with stronger balance sheets, higher incomes, greater wealth. And all that progress is a remarkable testament to the resilience and determination of the American people. They're the one, determination of American workers, of American entrepreneurs like all of you, of American business, is in stark contrast to my predecessor's record. His failure in handling the pandemic led to hundreds of thousands of Americans dying because of COVID. Remember, just inject a little dye, you'll be okay? His failure to lead the economic crisis that followed that create millions of Americans, cause them to lose their jobs. In fact, the last month of his failed term was the last month our economy lost jobs. On my watch, the economy has created jobs every single month for nearly 4 years. Because of you. My predecessor enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, which made overwhelmingly benefited the very wealthy and the biggest corporations. Made you feel good, I'm sure. But guess what? We don't have to hurt corporations. We don't have to. I come from the corporate state of the world. For 36 years, I represented a state, Tom and I, that had more corporations incorporated in Delaware than every other nation in the United States of America, every other state in the nation, the entire nation, in the state of Delaware. But what did his policies do? Increase the federal deficit significantly, more than any other previous presidential term. And the federal deficit went up every single year of his presidency and left office with the largest annual deficit in American history, $3 trillion. And now, he not only would give another $5 trillion tax cut for the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, he wants a new sales tax on imported goods, food, gasoline, clothing, and more. As most of you know, such policies would cost the average American family nearly $4,000 a year. And he and his allies say they support workers in the middle class. Give me a break. On my watch, we created over 700,000 manufacturing jobs. He lost 170,000 manufacturing jobs in 4 years. On our watch, factory construction is at a record high. It increased 210%. On the other team's watch, factory construction barely increased 2%. On my watch, the trade deficit with China declined to its lowest level in a decade. On his watch, the trade deficit with China soared. On my watch, we're seeing a record stock market and record 401ks. The bottom line is, I'm a capitalist. I wish I had more stock. But I believe capitalism is the greatest force to grow the economy for everybody. I really mean it. Now, don't point to the fact that for 36 years, as Tom would point out to you, when they did the income of all the members of Congress, I was listed as the poorest man in Congress. I never thought I was poor. I had a decent salary as a senator. But we face a fundamental choice. For the past 40 years, too many leaders have sworn by an economic theory that has not worked very well at all, trickle-down economics. Cut taxes for the very wealthy, and they deserve having taxes cut. But cut for the very wealthy and hope the benefits trickle down. Well, guess what? Not a whole lot trickled down to my dad's kitchen table. It's clear, especially under my predecessor, that trickle-down economics failed. And he's promising again trickle-down economics. But it will fail again. In fact, President Clinton pointed out that since the end of the Cold War in '89, America has created about 51 million jobs. Of those 51 million jobs in that period, the economy under Democratic presidents created 50 million. In fact, 50 million of those. And the economy under Republican presidents created 1 million of those new jobs. Folks, I've laid out a better choice, in my view, to grow the economy, from the middle out and the bottom up. I promised to be a president of all Americans, whether they voted for me or not. And I kept that promise, making a lot of Democrats very angry because studies show that the laws I signed actually deliver more benefits to red states than the blue states. That's a fact. More went to Republican states than the Democratic states. It may not have been good politics, but I believe it's good for the country. And I kept my promise. Today, we're better positioned than any nation in the world to truly win the economic competition of the 21st century, in my view. There's so much more we can do. We're going to continue bringing down prices for families by building more affordable housing, making child care more affordable. And by the way, you make it more affordable, it increases economic growth. Growth. By continuing to lower health care costs as well. We're continuing fighting to make sure everyone pays their fair share of taxes. And by the way, I hope some of you out there are billionaires. But paying 8.2% ain't quite enough. If you just paid 25%, it would generate enough income $500 billion over the next 10 years. We could cut the deficit, be paying 25%, wouldn't it? Anyway, I don't get going, my stuff. But my point is, that includes the story, they extended the child care tax credit to cut child poverty in half. We're determined to lower prescription drug costs, not just for seniors, but for everyone. Helping the federal budget and household budgets, and so much more. I'm sorry to go on so long. Let me close with this. Early in my term, I traveled to the skepticism of some of my own team and many of the Democrats to South Korea to meet with President Xi and President Hu in South Korea and the CEO of Samsung. They were manufacturing a significant portion of the chips in the world. I sat with them and encouraged both of them to invest in America. And they agreed. What surprised me when I asked the CEO of Samsung why he was prepared to invest billions of dollars to build chip factories in the United States, they mentioned two reasons. Because of our workforce, which I know we have the best workers in the world, and second, they said we have the safest and most secure nation in the world in which to invest. And now, as I stand here in front of some of the most significant business leaders, successful business leaders in the country, we also know we have the best research universities in the world, the best in the world. We have the most dynamic capitalist system in the world. And here's what we can't take for granted. We have stability because we have a rule of law. Our democracy is unparalleled. I know I talk a lot about democracy for the first time around, but it's really under stress. For real. We can never lose the democratic principles. American business or economic dynamism can't succeed, in my view, without stability and security that makes us the envy of the world, and we are. 4 years ago, we've gone from a historic crisis to greater progress than any of us thought possible. We did it with a new playbook based on one of the most oldest truths of our nation. Believe in America. Invest in America. That's the truth. Give the American people half a chance. They have never, ever, 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 ever let the country down. Give them a full chance and watch them lift us up to endless possibilities. That's what I see in this room. Incredible, I really mean this, and I'm not trying to be solicitous. Incredible business leaders, innovators, who embody that sense of possibilities. I spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has. Over 90 hours with him alone. Traveled 17,000 miles in the United States and China. We were in the Tibetan Plateau, and he looked at me and said, "Can you define America for me?" By the way, I gave all my notes in, so they have this. And I said, "Yeah, I can define America in one word, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Possibilities. We're a nation of possibilities. We think big. We believe big. We sometimes fail, but we think big. I'm never more optimistic about America's future. Just as remember who the hell we are and how far we've come together. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing, virtually nothing, we cannot do when we act together. So keep it up, folks. We need you badly. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
said we can bag it. you change the input? Does that affect it?
We could.
I mean, just so we can see that the screen is on.
Yeah.
So it's configured.
You said change the input?
Can you do that? Yeah. Input 1, input 2.
HDMI? Oh, actually, it's only one HDMI input.
Sure. Hey Miller, is there a way to change the input? Just so we can get an indication that, you know.
Well, the only other input on here is DVI.
Just DVI.
I've already checked the connections in the back down there work set up correctly, so I don't know how it's down here. We're good up here, we're just gonna see what they say. Until then, we have our...
Future reference, don't text that group.
Yeah.
Phone calls,
Yeah.
you know the proper phone calls.
So, in my opinion, you were correct.
You were correct.
You
Just
are not wrong.
Wrong
However,
group.
there are people who will not admit that we have problems from time to time, and they don't like that. It's very frustrating and backwards.
So that group you text has everybody, which is why I made
Commanders, everybody,
which is why I made the 18A event group. So you can text us, and we'll get it all figured out. But let's try to keep that stuff internal.
Okay. Yeah, I just replied to that one because that was the one that actually was talking about the.
Yeah.
All right.
It's all good.
You're fine. Good to know for the future.
And you can even like call Ashley something. Like calling helps a lot as opposed to like the text message because it sends people in frantic. They always believe that
People who aren't here see if like audio's out or audio's having sound, they're gonna think the worst possible thing on the road.
Okay.
So.
Phone calls help. Right group text helps. Because when I seen it, I was like, God damn it. I wasn't worried about you, but I was worried about other people.
When Plum grabbed my shoulder, I was like, this ain't good.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a long story.
Well, maybe in a minute I'll send out another text just saying everything's good.
Yeah. Once we're situated, we'll send out a text saying everything's good to go.
They're already notifying the press corps too. So. Or the press.
Might work though.
It might. You might just need a reset down there.
And I've been waiting for this.
You know, all this modernization talk, maybe they should modernize the electronics.
We're supposed to have a upgrade coming soon. I don't know what that entails though.
I don't know either.
I know we're supposed to have a microphone update.
Oh yeah.
I'm good, you?
Good. After that, they can see I stayed life trips course. I started
Fun. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not on anything on the board. I'm kind of just floating. I might just stay like this all day.
Yeah, because what it is from is really.
I'm not even in there anyway. I'm on lights.
There's nothing to do though. Yeah. It's literally like it was Sunday.
Yeah. Just don't want to think about this weekend. Just don't want to think about this weekend.
They're setting up stuff now, but we're pretty much already set up.
I just don't want to think about this weekend.
I don't either.
Josh, are you a gin man?
Gin?
Are you a gin man?
No, not really. I'm a tequila guy.
You're what, tequila guy?
No, it's a good question. I think there are instances where.
I was about to chime in on the gin debate. We're a gin distillery tour in England. Best time ever.
I mean, I think that's true.
Walked in sober, walked out shambles. God bless England.
If it's like mixed with something,
I like ginger ale lemonade mixed with it.
Ooh, interesting. I haven't tried that.
Little drops of lime. Pretty good too. Nate won't be here till 3:15.
How many shot? What time is it?
3:15.
I mean, I think that outsiders.
It hasn't even begun. What are you talking about? What does he do? Like, what does he do? We're not judging. I'm just curious at this rate.
It is useful to have a knowledge of the culture.
I'm gonna do lights on Sunday for the arrival. I'm not going to be here. Hey Josh, how much overtime do you think I can rack up this weekend? Bro, how much overtime do you think I should try and get? I will absolutely fucking come in here for Sunday and take their money. My weekend's already shot, so Friday night's about it. So watch this. someone gives me the current time at this moment, I'm gonna fucking kill them.
Unusual things can happen, but this year has been a little bit extraordinary. I mean, obviously the two categories that stand out are President Biden stepping aside as the Democratic nominee and two attempts on President Trump's election.
Like 9 minutes. I'm gonna clear off the stage.
Massively.
Because they come back soon.
In terms of the latter,
That's what they were telling me in the press.
on air with
They just got back.
network affiliation with News Nation for both the assassination attempts with
I just need to be heralded.
I'm just trying to react to those. I'm trying to say something sensible and useful. It was just a almost surreal experience. In relation to the Biden thing,
I can't believe they already want to swap this podium just because this has some seams here.
That's why they swapped it?
That's why I swapped.
Because there's seams.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus, what a waste. Like, you can't even see that.
What are they going to do with it?
It's a nice podium.
Yeah. Handcrafted. It's going to go someplace where people can go look at it. $3.99 probably.
Just put it in ELB.
Nah, people will touch it. They don't want that.
Let them touch it. It ain't in use no more anyway. Touch it up.
All that work for nothing.
Alright, Chris, don't let us down.
I'm not the one who built it though.
I did see that though. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice. But I'm not going to do it. But.
Okay.
Well, it's such a tense society here at the moment, and has been. I would say.
This is what happens. People touch things. But we're not here.
Thank you.
Did they ever do?
Not that all the things that are in this violent, but
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, good.
then I would say for 3 or 4 decades now, pushing forward.
Can you route something else? Yeah. I'll move main camera.
Obviously, it's something we're really talking about all in terms of how inflammatory words and, you know, God forbid if there was some sort of successful assassination. I think disorder, violence, I mean, the obvious difference is not to sound too crowd of Paris events is much more diverse issue.
Is there a way to see like a startup boost screen?
So I'm looking right now, it's red, so now it's turned on now. I don't know if anyone changed the input or not.
Yeah, I was asking that. I was like, I don't know what
It's going to be just a second. So they'll come in on HDMI in. Let me see what the input is.
I know, but I'm just saying, can you imagine? That's why I'm going to put that on that song.
I think it's maybe the screen here. I'm hitting the input now, I don't see anything on the screen.
Yeah, but do we see the input? Nothing came up when you saw power on too.
Yeah, I did the
Oh,
power.
wait, we got something. Attention, no signal. Well, I mean, at least now we know it works.
Yeah.
And a share of the crowd takes it as a sort of
How many different inputs are there?
professional wrestling kind of has a start and will laugh along with. I've seen people
3, 4.
crowds ask.
But it didn't tell me.
Which one we're on?
We're on HDMI in. It's not coming up, that's why I can't get the show, it's just showing us right here.
I was gonna say, if we can't figure it out in like the next 6 or 7 minutes, then we'll just let them know that they have to use this monitor.
Because I mean, technically the briefing's supposed to start in 5
2:15.
minutes. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to.
I already talked to the Matt.
So I'm not getting any kind of response.
And Switch is obviously definitely.
If I didn't come
I was going to say, hey man, bring an HD stuff. So we can measure what's coming
So I just uploaded and reset it.
Me too. We're doing this together. Getting it? Or it's not able to see it. Right.
So yeah, so I'm doing the input.
That's what me and Jeremy trying to figure out now.
It won't even change the input.
Is there a controller back there that controls this? Just for all for one normally, but that's it.
I can't see the controls or input.
6 or 7 minutes.
Hey, can we do this, guys? Can we, so this is supposed to go in like the next 4 or 5 minutes?
Yep.
So we'll just turn this back around and I'll let them know that we're going to have to use this monitor, unfortunately.
They should already be tracking your signal.
Okay, I'll let these guys know.
Turn this back on.
That's fine, come on.
Alright, cool. Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Anybody? Okay. Call for yeah, and I'll send a message to the group chat just saying like we're not you got it? Perfect. Thanks.
Good luck.
I would honestly say coin toss, really. It's really 50% big. If you look at the polls, contact is easy today.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Well, one thing that I would caution, which I actually did this week, is that both in 2016 and 2020, like performed his polls. And so if you're looking at it from Kamala Harris's position, I don't think it's
Thanks so much for that.
Hey, yeah, thanks for your help.
Yeah, I'll see you next time, all right?
So I
See you guys together.
these are the ones you were trying to figure out what to do with your conversation. How are you?
I'm fine. At least, I mean, I know it's not passed. Because they changed the time.
I haven't seen anything. It doesn't mean they have. But we'll be the last to